All right, guys, it is May 1st, 2024. So, Steve stopped by and we got the engine and trans set in. It actually went in really easy this time because the pinch weld wasn't hitting the transmission. It looks good. Everything is set. Got the transmission mount, the rubber mount bolted to the bottom of the trans, and it's actually setting on the crossmember. I haven't put the bolt in. I got to dig it out of a box. I got a bunch of the stuff. The hardware is labeled and tagged and bagged in little Ziplocs. I just need to get the box out and then dig through it for the bolt for that. I got the washers and lock washers and the nuts on the new motor mount bolts. On the engine mounts, because before the bolts were way too long and Steve didn't like it, and that engine side mount kit came with metric black oxide bolts, which would just rust fairly quickly. These are way too long. But I drove over to Tractor Supply because it's really close to my house, and they don't have 7/16 bolts. They skip to 1/2 inch. So I got some 1/2 inch thinking that they'd probably work, and they slide through the tube on the side engine mount that's on the frame. They won't go through the engine mounts. I'd have to hog them out just a little bit, which is fine. So I just went back, got in the truck again, drove downtown, and went to Lowe's and got some 7/16 bolts. They are 4 inches long, 7/16 by 14, I think is the thread size. So grade 8. Looks really nice on there. Looks really clean on there actually. And they're not too long. I haven't tightened them, but it's up to the lock nut or lock washer, so it'll shrink a little bit. So now it is actually setting exactly where it's going to be in there because now the rubber transmission mount's on there. Before I couldn't get the rubber transmission mount on because it was hitting that pinch weld that I went in and worked on the last couple of days. And what's really awesome is I just needed a little bit, but I went ahead and trimmed it all off and then went in and welded it and everything. It just makes the engine easier to get in and out. But now I have room to jack up the transmission in the back, jack it up, and I have room to easily place the mount in there and get the bolts put in and everything. It's not tight and it's not a problem. However, I did see something that might be a problem, and I might have to go back into there and use a die grinder and clearance a spot, and then I'll have to go back and probably use a brush and brush some of that paint on. And it is actually the pinch weld. Heck, I'm not even on the right side here. What am I thinking? It looks like it may be. No, it's okay. Well, I don't know. Underneath it looks different than it does out here, but you can't really see it. So the transmission lines where they bolt onto the transmission, I believe the top one is probably going to be a little bit difficult to get to, for a wrench to tighten it up. Just going to have to try it. If anything, I'll take the cross member out and lower the trans way down and then get the line put on and then jack it back up there. So that is just, let me just really explain this, because a couple days ago I had a neighbor over here, and he kind of knows a little bit about cars, but I wouldn't say he's a builder or anything like that. But anyway, what the whole issue is with this setup and why I had to pull the engine and everything back out. This engine is sitting in stock location. So if you're going to be running a bigger distributor like an HEI, which I always run HEIs, that's my preferred distributor. Every car I've done, I've moved the engine forward. So that's what I'm used to. And I don't have any issues like this. So this is actually new to me, possible transmission line issue, trying to get a wrench in there and tighten it up, and also the pinch weld hitting the 700R4. These cars didn't come with overdrive 700R4 4-speed automatics, you know what I mean? So they had little bitty tiny transmissions. They had 3-speed standard transmissions, and they had 2-speed automatic transmissions from the factory. So when you try to put in a little bit more modern of a transmission, this is the type of issues you run into. So Steve is running an MSD distributor, and it's small bodied like a factory point style distributor, so the engine doesn't need to come forward. And the other thing about it, the reason we didn't move it forward is his drive shaft's already been cut down and fit for this setup. So if we move the engine forward, the drive shaft would hang too far out of the tail shaft and he'd have to have a new one made. So if you ever get in a situation with you're on a budget and you're trying to do a drive shaft on one of these cars, it's best to find a used drive shaft from something that's longer. That's why I usually keep a bunch of drive shafts around. And then you can take it to a drive shaft shop and they can shorten it and rebalance it. So they can't add to it. That's always build a new one. So, or go out and buy a used longer one and have it cut down. So anyway, just in case you didn't know that. Now, back to the neighbor that come over the other day. So I want to explain this because some people may not understand the importance of this. So what he was saying, instead of trimming that pinch weld down, he was telling me to take the crossmember mount and modify it to where it lowers the back of the transmission down. And you can't do that. The reason is it will have the angle of the drive shaft angle and all that stuff will be all jacked up and you'll have a vibration going on the highway. Most likely an in and out vibration. You'll feel it and then it'll quit. Then you'll feel it and then it'll quit. That is a driveline vibration. So, been there, done that. So, when I set this engine up, I didn't have the body on it. This is a whole nother chassis, and I just did all the engine mounts, training mounts, sitting right in the driveway on the chassis by itself. I didn't mock the body up on it to see if all this stuff had fit. So this is why I'm running into these issues, because of stock location versus 3/4 forward like I'm used to. So if you don't understand this and you're pretty new to the channel, I'm going to go further into an explanation on this so you fully understand what I'm talking about and why you don't just drop your transmission down. Before, Steve took this car to a transmission shop, and I don't know what they were doing on it, but they put a rear cross member in it. And when they installed it, they obviously didn't put an angle finder or a bubble level on the intake manifold. When I got in there messing around on what I found, because this car had a vibration in it, a really bad one, driving down the highway, they had it set at 7 degrees down. The tail shaft of the transmission was 7 degrees down. It's supposed to be 3. So when you set up an engine and trans in a car, like this is what I did to Steve's car. I leveled the chassis in the driveway with jack stands, and I used shims like pieces of steel and stuff like that underneath the jack stands, and used bubble levels until the whole chassis was completely level setting there. Then I bolted on the original front mount engine mounts right here. Originally these cars have front mounts. They bolt in right here for a V8. This is for straight 6. They bolt onto here. It's like a little L bracket thing, and it has cushions and a stem. There was already new rubber cushions on that. So, you know, if they were older cushions, it could be off to one side or the other from them being, you know, squished and old and all that kind of stuff. But those were new. So I bolted those to the frame in the stock location where they're supposed to be. So the height of the front of this engine is exactly where it needs to be, 100%. So then I used a jack underneath the tail shaft of the transmission. I set the intake on it, and I put the angle finder on it, and I adjusted the transmission with the jack up and down until I got that dead zero. So that angle finder on that carb pad is dead zero. So when that's dead zero, that's where you bolt your cross member in and set it all up for that to be at 0 or a bubble level dead middle. That is exactly how you want it. When that carb pad is flat, it has 3 degrees down at the tail shaft for proper geometry for your rear end. So this is where you see it, is right here when you bend down. See how that intake manifold's sticking up at the back? And that angle finder's on 0. So that is absolutely 100% perfect setup in this car for no vibrations and no issues. Had I have just dropped the cross member down, it'd have been about 7 degrees again, or a little bit less probably, and he'd have had his vibration back. So anyway, I understand what some people that are not experienced, I guess, in it wouldn't know. And you could run into issues in your own garage if you're doing this at home, because that would be the easy route is to redo the mounts on the cross member and drop it back down instead of going in and doing that work on the pinch weld like I did. But now the car's set up like it's supposed to be, and it has plenty of room. So there you go. That's start to finish pretty much the setup. Now I'm going to get started on this thing, and I'm going to go to town. I want to get the engine and trans bolted down. I'm going to try the transmission line first, see if I have to lift it back up or down or not it. But Steve has his other Kragers here. I don't think you guys have seen. So this is what the car looks like with a pair of them on it. So these are 7s, these are 8s, these are 4 1/4 back spacing because we're running a 1976 Camaro 10 bolt. They're just a little bit wider than stock. So if you had a 4-inch wheel, 4-inch back spacing wheel, the tire was really close to the quarter panel. It might have rubbed when you was turning, going up an incline, or in an angle, pulling into a driveway, going up an incline, it'd probably rub a little bit. But now it's got a 1/4 inch more clearance, which is pretty nice. These are 7s. I don't remember what the back spacing is on it now, but when I was looking at them at Jegs, this disc brake kit moves the wheels out 7/8 of an inch per side, so I kind of factored that into it a little bit, which it should be where it needs to be, basically. But anyway, so we got the other 2 Kragers here. I need to put them on, but that side, it's a little bit difficult to get to on that side, so the car needs to be rolled way out to get those wheels on. And I still have to do all the brake hardware in the rear back here, so there's no real sense in putting this other one on until I get in there to do that. So we got a new water pump. I'm going to show you this because I am a long water pump guy, not a short water pump, and that's what this is a short. And my recommendation was, we don't know how long his old water pump has not had any, fluid in it, which is going to in turn dry the seals out from just setting. So this is what he ended up buying. That's a nice piece, man. Here's the original. And like I said, I'm just afraid that the seal's probably going to be dried out in this. And who knows how long it would last before it starts, seeping or something. So the other issue was somebody put a fitting in here, a short one, and you can't get a socket on it. And you can't even really get a wrench on it. It was starting to round it off. So these short water pumps, you need to have a long fitting here, like this. Then you can get a socket, wrench, everything on it right there. This is a tough stuff, and you can see it has a universal pattern on it here, which is kind of nice. The shaft height is identical to this one, so I think this is going to be just fine. This is a polished aluminum piece, and here is the part number. 1353NB, and this is the Smoothie short aluminum polished water pump. Really, really nice unit. I am very, very impressed with it. It looks pretty much identical to the GM, and I was really glad that it's the same height, because sometimes you'll get an aftermarket short pump. From what I noticed when I was looking for him online, a new one, some of them this is up higher or lower than factory, so had to get that just right. And I also noticed some of them had a port here along with that one, and you'd had to put a plug in here, and you're going to see that on top of the engine. So this one is smooth. So that is a really trick piece, man. That's how good it looks on that copper painted engine. Freaking sweet. And I've got ARP hex head stainless bolts to put in that. So that is going to look really good. And he's got the polished aluminum pulleys on it. He got some cherry bombs because he's old school. That's what he's going to put on it. It will have a 2.5-inch dual exhaust kit put on it from front to back, tailpipes. And he got these. These are spinners for the Kragers. So how cool is that? Now, one thing I'd mentioned I wanted to do was paint the blue with the copper that's on the car. I wanted to put copper in there, and I actually ran into a little bit of a snafu here. So I was going to tape off this outer raised edge around this Krager symbol here, and then paint this, and then just wipe it off with acetone on a rag to get the the top edge of the Krager back to chrome. I need to scuff that blue, and there's not really a way to do that unless this was masked off. Now, you probably could use some adhesion promoter on there, But that stuff, every time I've used it, I haven't had that much luck with it. So we've decided to go ahead and leave them blue. Otherwise, for me to feel comfortable with it, we'd have to go in there and mask this off by putting masking tape on there and rubbing it down on there real hard and using an X-Acto knife and cutting every letter out. And then go in there and try to use something to get in there and sand or scuff that. Then paint it. And then peel all that little bitty edges of tape off. And I don't think he wants to pay that much labor for that. I don't think the juice is worth the squeeze, guys. I really don't. So another thing we ran into was, when you buy Kragers nowadays, you have two options. You get conical seat, 60-degree conical seat lug nuts, which basically have the, you know, the angled edge on them. And then you have the shank style. And I told him the part numbers I gave him was for the conical seat. And when we went to put them on there, you can't get the lug wrench on there. It's trying to hit the spokes. So I had him get a set of splined lug nuts. They're a lot skinnier and they come with a wheel lock. It's basically, every one of them's a wheel lock, basically. So he got those. Those are over there. So anyway, that's what we're up against. We got some cool parts. So I'm going to go ahead and post this video since I talked for 16 minutes. I'm going to go ahead and post this one. And then I'm going to go ahead and bolt a whole bunch of crap on this engine today. And I'll video as I go. And I'll try to set the camera up and let it video me actually using a wrench or something for a change. Hopefully this footage didn't lock up on me. So I'm starting out with a fresh camera, and it's not super hot today like it was. It was hot and muggy yesterday and the day before because of the rain we had. Today it's a little bit cool, so it's a little bit better for that GoPro, because when the GoPro gets hot it starts doing crazy stuff. Anyway guys, thanks for watching.